Welcome to Conversations with Ken. I'm Sean Gray. This is Ken McElroy. Today we're going to be sharing with you guys a little personal side of Ken and his story and the whole MC company and how they were able to build and grow a portfolio to well over $1 billion, which is extremely impressive. And we want to know how it came to be. So first, let's start with when did Ken McElroy get started with real estate? What was your first taste of it, and how did you know it was something you wanted to do?
Well, I think it's important to know that I did not grow up around it.
Okay.
I did grow up in a house, of course, so that's technically real estate. But, even in college, I never even considered, even then, a career in real estate. And what happened was I was very lucky in my very first job that I wasn't quite done with college was managing an apartment building in downtown Seattle. And
Is that something you sought out?
No, well, it was a long story, but a friend of mine worked for this company that was in Seattle, which is where I lived, and said, "Hey, do you want to manage this property?" And he said it's free rent, and I said, "Done." So, free rent. As a college student with student loans and all that, free rent was something. I had no clue what I was getting into, and it was an amazing experience, collecting rent and turning units. I had grown up in the construction business with my dad.
Okay.
My dad was a contractor. So I knew how to do everything. I could, fix things. I obviously paint, clean, all that kind of stuff. So I was doing a lot and collecting the rents and all those kinds of things. And I was just finishing up my 4-year degree, which actually ended up being more like 5.
Understand.
Yeah, because I wrestled in college too, so
Right.
I couldn't take full credits, and so I was about a year behind. So I was on the 5-year plan. So it was a perfect way for me to get free rent while I was finishing up school.
Okay. So first introduction to real estate business and investing was on the property management side.
Yeah.
So after college, did you continue in property management, continue in real estate? How soon did you start investing?
Well, I started to get interested because the owner of the building would come, around the 5th, 6th of the month after all the rents were collected, and see how much was collected, and he would take the money to the bank, and sometimes I would, but I started building a relationship with him, and I started asking lots and lots of questions, and he seemed to have a pretty nice lifestyle where. A lot of freedom, and there was rents coming in, and I had never ever been exposed to it, and I was seeing it from the operations side.
Right.
And so I got very interested, and so while I was there, I decided to get my real estate license, and that was the first step, and that was really my first step to education on real estate at all.
Okay.
Was in Washington State taking the real estate test, which is a national and a state test, and there's so many things involved in the studying for and taking of that test that I learned a lot,
Right.
and I got very interested.
Quick question on that, because I'm sure some of the viewers might be thinking this. As a real estate investor, is it beneficial to get your real estate license, or is it not?
Well, it can be. So,
Okay.
and I'll just walk you through my story. So,
Okay.
the reason why I think it can be is because the test is comprised of a lot of technical things around laws and, titles and deeds and things like that are very helpful as you start to navigate through that as an investor.
Right.
And so that's super important, I think, just the knowledge. The other thing is that there are times where you can participate in the commissions, with something,
Right.
other deals and things like that. So I've had my licenses in lots of states. I've been licensed salesperson, licensed brokers in many states over the years.
Sure.
And because there are different laws in different states too. And so I love education.
Right.
So anything I can learn about water rights in Arizona or growth boundaries in Washington
Sure.
or Oregon or things like that. And they're all very unique. Every state and every city is very unique. So, to me, I think it's a great avenue if you're interested in real estate, at least to have that kind of knowledge. It certainly helps as you're negotiating and dealing, with other people.
Yeah. So I've heard it said, this may or may not be true, that a real estate agent takes an oath to sell properties at fair market value. is it detrimental to have your license in any way, or is that true as a real estate investor?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I've never actually
Do your
listed.
research.
Yeah, I've never actually listed
Okay.
anything personally. So I've never sold a single-family home.
Okay.
I bought them on my own
Right.
through realtors.
Right.
And so, but I will say that the way things get sold, typically, is based on what the market bears at the time. So,
Okay.
so fair market value could be through appraisals. It could be maybe something that is done at auction, or and
Yeah.
so I don't really think that there's a lot of great deals out there. I don't think everybody wants a deal. I get that,
Right.
but I think at the end of the day, the banks are smart. If it's a bank-owned property, the banks are smart. They're going out and getting appraisals, trying to figure out what they're worth. Or if you own something and you're not going to discount it because you're going through some divorce or something like that. You just aren't.
Right.
You're going to. I think you're going to try to sell it for. And you might get a little bit of a deal for a fast close or something like that. But generally, I just don't think that exists.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let's get back to the Ken McElroy story. You started, building a relationship with the investor, the owner of the property that you were working at. Where did that go from there?
So what's interesting is that owner was using a management company in Seattle, and that management company was managing the property for him, and I was an employee of the management company.
Okay.
So, and that's a very common relationship. So it's very common for people to buy investment properties and not want to manage them.
Right.
And so they use what's called a third-party management company. And so, coincidentally, my very first job ever was with that company. There was they hired me as I was finishing college, and so I started to learn a little bit more about the company too.
Right.
Because they were managing properties all up and down Interstate 5, all the way clear down from Olympia all the way up toward Canada. And so I was driving back and forth. Later I ended up becoming a regional manager for them, and then an asset manager and a vice president. So that was really my only job out of college.
Okay.
Was working for them and managing lots of properties, fourplexes, eightplexes, big units,
Right.
small units, new construction, stuff that's 100 years old.
Right.
And so through that process, you learn a lot about a lot.
At what point did you transition from property management into, okay, I'm going to become an investor and do this myself? What was your first deal?
Yeah, well, that was the scariest part, right?
Right.
I think whenever you're making that transition point, that you're kind of going out into the unknown. So I started small, and that's what I always recommend. So I started using my own money, and I bought a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo, and I made sure that it cash flowed.
Okay.
That's the first thing that I did. And then I did it again, and then I did it again. So I started on small stuff.
Right.
But what happens is you only have so much savings, and you only have so much money. So at some point you have to find deals and do what's called the syndication, where you're actually raising money from other people to be able to do that. That to me was the scariest part, because I felt comfortable actually taking my own money and investing my own money.
Right.
But when you are taking other people's, there's a whole new responsibility to it. And not that I was doing it any differently, but it's just different. It's different when you take other people's monies, because typically at that point, they're people that you know. So friends or family and things like that. That's very common in our industry, to go to friends and family to say, hey, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that?
Yeah.
And I'm a relationship guy, so I really, really wanted to make sure that when I got to that point, that I was only getting the best deals that I could, and I wasn't just trying to make fees and things like that, because the industry is full of people that do that too.
Okay.
And so that was my very first deal, the big deal, aside from the small ones.
Let me ask you this about that deal. The investors, you said you raised money from investors, right? Where, at what point were you building your investor list, or how did that investor list come to be? Was it just in the relationships over the time of being in the industry?
Yeah, so So yeah, a little bit. So as you get involved in an industry, you meet lots of people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the guy that owned the building that I managed obviously was an investor
Right.
and a wealthy guy,
Right.
and so as you start to manage third-party properties, there are others, and you start showing them around. They fly in, or they're local, and they come visit the property. You meet with them, and so yes, so your network and your relationships get bigger, but but it's different when you are now buying something and you're trying to raise the money
Right.
for it. A lot different.
Right.
And so what happens there is I had the misconception, I think a lot of people do, that you need a whole bunch of money committed before you go do something.
Right.
And so that's the track I went down. So I started going to people like my uncle who
Right.
had a bunch of money, and other people and that I knew, and they all said the same thing. They said, well, bring us a deal and we'll look at it every single time. And so, I had the same thought as a lot of people, which was, let's get a bunch of, I didn't want to go put my neck out on the line without the equity.
Right.
The same token, the equity wouldn't put their neck out on the line without a property.
Right. So what's the solution to that?
So the solution, I think, is to be educated on seeing a deal, package it up correctly, and then present it to equity. And my experience was that most of the deals that I ended up buying, I made sure had a value add component to them. In other words, they weren't pie in the skies. A lot of times when I see deals, people they come with theories and ideas and things like that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But they're a lot more risky than, like, for what I was doing was I would say, here's a property, this is how it's been running, these are the things that I would do to improve it, do you want in? You know what I mean? It's a lot different, and then I could show them specifically on how I was going to grow the income from year to year to year. Even if I didn't do it exactly the way I thought I would, it still was a plan.
Yeah.
And so they were investing in me, they were investing in my team, they were investing in the plan, and they were investing in the property, more importantly.
Right.
So, so their money was committed into a property itself. They're actually physically on title. So we were partners together on things. And so that was a very different relationship. And the key, as I've said before, is the property. And then once you buy that, then it's the management. It's being able to execute on everything that you think you can do.
Right, because the investor's primary concern is, hey, when do I get my money back?
Well, yeah,
Right.
Or is it invested well? Is it going to have a return? And when can I get my money back? And
Right.
what's the most important thing to know, I think, is before I exited the property, I actually had that all figured out. So before I even bought something, I knew how long I was going to hold it. I knew what I was going to do year to year, and I knew what I was going to, generally I knew what I was going to do, all done in some kind of a short little business plan.
Right.
Before I buy it.
Right.
So it wasn't, hey, let's invest in this and see where it goes.
Right.
It's very specific.
Right.
This is what I was going to do year one. This is what I'm going to do year two. This is what I'm going to go do in year three.
So not to get too technical, but I'm curious, you're saying all the people you went to go raise money from said, hey, bring me a deal, right? Show me the deal first. Do you have to get that deal under contract, just put in a letter of intent? Because generally a good deal probably won't last very long. So there's a window, I'm guessing, that you have to go out and raise the money on the time that you have the ability to close on the deal.
So
What does that look like?
all very good questions. Well, first of all, not all deals are that apparent to people. So, I think there's a misconception that once a good deal hits the market, it goes really quickly. I think that's probably true if it does hit the market.
Okay.
But I don't see that as often as you think.
Okay.
So some of the very best deals that we bought were from banks, let's say. And, banks had taken them back for some reason. And, you make a lot of money when you buy, and obviously you cash out when you sell,
Right.
but you really, really want to make your money when you buy. And
Okay.
so, when something's owned by a bank, it's usually a mess, and there's a lot of people that don't want to touch it.
Right.
And so those were the kinds of deals that I liked. I liked properties that were 50% occupied.
Right.
So a property that's, say, 50% occupied, for example, is not going to sell for a lot of money, but it's going to be worth more when it's, say, 90, 95% occupied.
Right.
And so that is as simple as it can get.
Okay.
And so they're not necessarily listed, and there's not a lot of people flocking for those kinds of things, because they're not stable.
Okay.
So what you're talking about are stable deals. When you're looking at houses, for example, you got nice house, house that's been beat up, it's going to sell for less, and so that's simple. But when you're looking at something that has, a bad management history around it, and there's a lot of damage and things like that, it gets more complicated.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so just chronological order. We got out of college. We did the property management thing, built the relationships with the investors, started doing our own deals via syndication, raising money from other investors. At what point did MC come into play?
So, I've had several companies before MC, but they're identical.
Okay.
And so I always kind of had this buying properties or getting land and building properties, and so did my partner Ross McAllister, and we were just doing it independently of each other.
Okay.
And so one day, because we're both pro-education, we were both on the board of a local apartment association called the Arizona Multi-Housing Association, or the AMA. And we had gotten to know each other, and I was looking to expand into Tucson, and I called him up and I said, hey, because we had been talking all those years, I said, I'm looking at buying a management company in Tucson, and I want to expand. And he said, well, let's go have a cup of coffee. And so we just decided to merge our companies together at that point.
Okay, how long ago was this?
That would have been about 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So bringing us all the way to today. We've gone through that whole process. The philosophy is, underperforming, force equity at value add, right? MC has grown. You and Ross together have grown this company huge, over $1 billion in portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So what's next? Where are you at right now? What is the big opportunity right now for Ken McElroy and MC?
The good news is everything that we have bought is worth a lot.
Right.
The bad news is if we sell it all, then we would come in at the top of the market. Right. So what we've been doing is spending our time working on our management team and all of our systems and our relationships that have gotten us to this point. We're selling properties that are underperforming for whatever reason. Sure. Like there's properties that we bought that maybe we shouldn't have bought, or maybe they were included in a portfolio sale and they were, we had to take everything. And so we're selling off about a couple $100 million worth of properties right now. And then we are taking that profit and equity and we're putting it into a fund, and we're getting ready for the next downturn.
Got you. Okay. Picking up properties on the cheap.
Hopefully, yeah. So right now we're working on all the legal stuff around that. We're selling. We have all the 10 properties in escrow.
Okay.
We'll sell them all before the end of the year, and then we'll take that money, which will be just under $100 million, and we'll take that and we'll put it into a fund, and then that money will be earmarked for value opportunities again. But we have to kind of wait, for the next downturn.
Yeah. Okay, so my question now is you mentioned, hey, sometimes there's a property that maybe we shouldn't have bought, an underperforming one for whatever reason. How do you go about having that conversation with your investors? Or even right now, how do you have that conversation with your investors saying, hey, we're selling a bunch of stuff?
First of all, I think it's incredibly important to be fully transparent. I think what happens a lot of times is people want to say, oh, look at all the great little shiny things that are going well, you know. But our philosophy has been to give them both. And that's what that's done, is it's built the confidence with our investor group and our employees. They feel comfortable standing up there and saying, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, we bought this incorrectly, or hey, whatever, you know. And so that's an education in itself. But and so I think it's unreasonable to think that you're always going to hit home runs. And it's very probable that you buy something and it just isn't going to work out. Like one example is we bought a property from a bank in San Antonio, and we bought it at so cheap, and we put a couple $1,000,000 into it, and the neighborhood is just brutal, right? It's just within a couple years, it's a tough neighborhood, tough management. And we missed that. We thought, hey, we bought it so well, and we're going to make it look great, and hopefully we can attract, a better tenant, a better resident base. And the fact is it is where it is, and so it's always been a struggle,
right?
With just turnover and things like that. So that's just one example. Another one we bought, which was on the Gulf of Mexico, near Galveston, and we've been hit by 2 hurricanes.
Right.
And we got hit by Hurricane Ike, and then the most recent one. And so those create insurance issues, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars of damage, and so some of them you're just like, okay, and now our insurance costs are so high, and so there's things that you learn as you move through. And in Oklahoma, we've had 5 or 6 hailstorms, and when I say hail, I mean golf ball size hail. One time it broke 40% of the windows out and punctured all the roofs of a property we had in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And so you learn these things. Nothing wrong with property, but and so there are things that happen that just create extra layers of drama, from where it's located or whatever, and then you start to learn. And so we backed out of Oklahoma City, we're backing out of Tulsa, we're backing out of Houston, and we're going to redeploy in other areas and other markets that are really strong.
Right. Okay. One final question for you. If there was one thing that Ken McElroy and MC companies could implement today that would have the biggest impact on getting you to the next level. I remember a conversation I had with Robert Kiyosaki, and a lot of people are looking at you and your level of success and how much you've achieved with real estate, and are thinking, wow, he must be done, or just coasting or maintaining or just sitting back and enjoying life. And yes, you do enjoy life, but you absolutely, like what Robert said to me, he said, what got me to this level is it's not what's going to get me to the next level, right? And I know you're all about growth and continuing on. If you had to implement one thing today that would have the biggest impact on MC companies and Ken McElroy, what would that thing be?
First, let me just comment on what you said. I think that what happens is, in a good way, you're kind of ignorant in your early 20s, early 30s, to everything that's ahead of you. You just are. You don't know the major obstacles and walls and failures and things that you're going to have. And they do come, and they come hard, and some of them hurt. And I honestly think that there's a process to that you have to go through, that you just have to start with some kind of momentum. You just have to do something. Just do anything, Right,
okay.
And so with that, you gain experience and knowledge just like you would in anything. Like, whether you're playing golf or driving a car, or whether you're learning IT, or it doesn't really matter. Like, every day you learn something new and things come at you. And so it's the same. And so what happens is, you fast forward 15 years, let's say, or 20 years down the road, and you have all this legacy and all this experience. And so what Robert's saying is, and what most people that have been doing what I'm doing at this point in their careers are saying is, we're not done because we have all this great knowledge up to this point, and so we're going to make better decisions for the next correction. And so I would encourage, the biggest mistake I think people make is that they just don't start. They don't do anything. There's no momentum, and they're sitting there trying to figure it all out before they make one move, because they don't want to make a wrong move, and I can guarantee you that they will.
Right.
But they're so hesitant on making any kind of mistakes that they don't make any moves. And so that's what I think he's saying. And so my partner Ross and I, now it's gotten really fun. You know, we're at a point to where we understand markets better, we understand interest rates better, we understand what drives markets, we understand supply and demand, and we understand how to hire acquisition people, and obviously we understand management. But all that stuff together with the team that we have provides us a next greatest opportunity to go in even harder, and stretch ourselves again.
Right.
Even though some people might say, "Oh my God," and we are, of course, we're retired, but that would be pretty boring, And so the next level might be to grow it to 5 billion,
Right.
let's say, and so that actually produces a little anxiety with me,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
all of a sudden, do I really want 1,500 employees?
Right.
Right? And all those kinds of things, and be in all these different markets, and I'm not afraid of that. But to me, I just take everything I've learned and just scale it now for the next time.
All right. Makes sense. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you. Now you guys have a little bit more insight into Ken McElroy, how he came to be the success that he is and continues to be, and MC companies as well. A couple key takeaways that I got was, pro education, always learning, continuing to learn. As far as the philosophy of investing, adding value, and that goes for also the relationships that you've built along the way. So hopefully you guys have gotten a lot of valuable information out of this. Head over to kenmcroy.com, subscribe to become a free member. Got tons of more content for you over there. Got a premium side where Ken goes deep into a lot of these topics. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.